Hi and welcome back to askNK, and this is going to be the very first video which I will be making in 2019, and I think a very good way to kick off this year is to probably answer some or most of the questions that was asked about Twinmotion last year, and most of the questions that have been asked within this time. I think a couple of users get to find some things pretty daunting, maybe because it's the first time they're getting to use the app, and sometimes these are just little technical stuffs that they probably don't know how to get around. So first questions that the very first question I've gotten severally is, when you import an object, how do you locate that object? So I'm going to simply show you how you can locate that. So we have this SketchUp object which we've gracefully downloaded from the warehouse, and I've loaded it in. And obviously, if you want to load stuff, you can use the import button here, and there's also a bugger menu you can always make use of here. So how we get to locate our object is when you come over here within the outliner or hierarchy bar or scene graph, depending on what you call it, you can click here within the folder, because every single thing you import into Twinmotion creates a folder for you. So we click here, and once you open up this folder, you see everything that exists inside the model which you imported. So we're going to select this, right click and click on zoom to selection. Just clicking on zoom to selection, it's going to locate that object wherever it is in your scene. So let's say we want to go over to the setting group. We don't know where this group is. Let me use something like this, and right click and say zoom to selection, and all of a sudden automatically you're there. Another great way to find this stuff, which I've also talked about in other videos, is once you have this object selected and you press F on your keyboard, Twinmotion automatically focuses that object wherever it is in your scene. So if I click on this and just right click zoom to selection, you can see that there, and that is pretty much how you can find the objects that you're looking for. Okay, so another question I get more often is, how do I orbit around my object? So let's say I have this as the last object that was selected, and I want to be able to orbit around the entire object. You see, once you load up Twinmotion gives you the option to select, and since we are using the default way of orbiting, it simply means we have to press down shift, and with the middle mouse button then we can rotate around. But you see, this rotation is happening within a certain angle, which is not what we want. So what we're going to do now is, if there is a particular point where we want to orbit from, so let's say I want to orbit from, let's pick something like this. I'm going to pick the floor, and let's say this floor is what I want to orbit with, so I just want to use it as what I want to orbit with. If I now hold down shift and orbit, I'm going to orbit based off that floor. If there's something else I want to select and use as the orbit, as the point for my orbiting, so let's just go through and find something. Obviously I downloaded this from the internet, so the naming might be a little bit different. Okay, that looks fine. Let me go through and let's actually collapse all of this and then look for something. So let's say I'm going to make use of that. I'm just going to press F on the keyboard. I wish I can, okay fine, I can select that. So if I have this lamppost, selected, if I decide to orbit, I will orbit based off the lamppost. This is just one of the things you probably need to know, and it's going to really help you when you're navigating around your scene here. Let's look for something else. What's this stuff? Okay, this is the default character that ships with SketchUp. We don't need that. Okay, so if I just tap F, we have this other lamp there. So this is how you can orbit around your object or around your scene. So just find one particular object, select that object, and you can make use of that object to orbit. So the object becomes the target, because the camera is going to be locked on the object that is selected, which is actually a good thing. You don't really find this sort of feature all the time in most of these rendering apps. You don't really find this feature. So you lock onto that object, and then you can make use of the object to orbit around your scene. Okay. You can make use of the object to update it around your scene. And let's look at the third question. The third question, and this actually happened a few days back. It's one that I think a lot of people might have as a problem, especially if you're coming from ArchiCAD. The question is, how do you ship between ArchiCAD and Twinmotion? So if you go over to Twinmotion website, there is a Twinmotion linker, something like that. There is a Twinmotion linker which you can use to link. So if you come over to the tools here, there is a linker which you can use to link SketchUp, SketchUp, Revit, and ArchiCAD. So with this, you can directly send your file from ArchiCAD directly into Twinmotion, and also you can send updates back and forth from Twinmotion to, from ArchiCAD or Revit or SketchUp. You can send your stuff back and forth from there back to this place. And one more thing is this is also something I covered in one of the videos. I think that should be the video that talks about, I think that should be the pro tips. So the question is, how do you import and save things inside your Twinmotion? So let's say we have this lamppost here and we want to use this lamppost all the time. So we don't want to continually go back and forth, importing this for all of our projects. We want it to be something that would exist directly inside Twinmotion whenever we open Twinmotion. So if you come through and come over to user library, you'll find out things that we've saved in previous videos. Okay, so you can check out the pro tips, and I'm also going to show you how that works here. So how that works is pretty simple. So I have this object here. Let's actually rename this so that we can remember it. So I'm just going to rename it lamppost. Okay, so I'm just going to rename that, and I'll right click here and I can say add to user library. So once I add it to user library, once we close Twinmotion and open Twinmotion, this by default exists. And what this does is instead of recreating geometries up and down, this will act more like an instance for us to just simply drag, drop, and move around in the scene. So you can just create multiple stuff. So we can just create multiple stuff back and forth. So you have it directly inside your user library, which brings me to, can you import and save stuff inside your user library? Yes, of course. You can just decide to download tons of things that you're going to use for most of your projects, upcoming projects, and then you can just save them inside your user library, knowing fully well that whenever you want to make use of these things, you can just come back and use them. So a couple more things to note when working with Twinmotion is when you basically want to import a model, normally we simply click on the import button to import this model. But severally I've had questions of people asking, how can you go ahead and change the environment, just in case maybe you have your own environment you want to use, or you have a certain kind of background you want to use. So how that is done is quite simple. When you go over to import, now instead of importing geometry, you can choose to import a landscape, and by default, once you click on geometry and hit open, from here the file types you're going to get are 3D file types. So instead of doing that, you may want to click on landscape and then click on open, and from there you're going to be able to find models. You're going to find images that you can make use of. The next thing, which I think is also worth knowing, a couple of people have asked about, is about how materials can be placed here. So sometimes you may have objects that might be triangulated, or maybe objects that are not properly squared out from the 3D application you're coming from. But if these objects have UVs, it will be very easy for Twinmotion to understand how to apply textures on this model. So for example, if you want to add a texture on a certain kind of model, there are various UV patterns or various texture patterns that you can make use of. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring out all of these ones which we're going to make use of as examples. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them here. So if we go all the way to material and I click on the material, let's just use wood for all of them. If I click on this wood and place this wood here, you're going to find out that we're making use of the UV. We're making use of the UVs from this object to place this texture on the object. If I switch this and select cubic, now if this object is just made up of cubes, or maybe it doesn't have a UV that is cut right into this, obviously we're going to just simply get this object to behave in that way. I may not be able, or I may not really find it appealing to just pick up this object and apply on this object like that. So for something that is cylindrical like this, if you don't have UVs cut for this object, then you can use a cylindrical UV, and then you can use that to apply on your object. The same thing goes for an object that is spherical. So if I just click on this object, I can click and drag right on top there and get it done with. So you can for your models, you can go ahead and simply try out all of these UV types to see which one works for you. So if you have objects that you're bringing in and maybe they have triangles in your viewport, or when you're working, or when you're trying to get these things, or when you're trying to build your model, or maybe landscape your model, you may have to try to play with these things and see how they work. One more thing is, most of the times when you bring in a model from whatever 3D app you're coming from, you get to find out that once you swap or change the materials, you figure out that material is lost. In truth, the material is not lost. What happens is, when you click on this button here, you'll be able to find all the materials that is associated with the model that you've imported. You find all of them here. The next thing which I would actually like to talk about now is about let's just go all the way up, and let me come through and bring in furniture. So I'm just going to bring in a furniture here. So for this example, I'm just going to roll in this furniture. So I'm just going to make multiple copies of this furniture, for example. And another thing I'm going to do now is I may choose to add a light, because it's going to really help explain what I want to say. So let's see, let me start with a small decal of a ground. Okay, so I'm just going to put this decal here, and then I'm going to go all the way up and add a light. Okay, so let's just raise this light all the way up. Let me turn this down a little bit. Okay, so sometimes when working inside Twinmotion, you may for some reason not want to be able to see the helpers. Okay, so you may not want to see the helpers when you're working in Twinmotion. So all of these tiny dots, at times it could be a bit annoying, and maybe you don't want to see them while working in Twinmotion. So how you can get these things out of the way when you're working is, if you go over to the preference tab by clicking on edit and going over to preference, you can go over to appearance, and then you can turn off the visual helpers. So once you turn this off and select OK, you will not be able to see all of these helpers in your viewport. If you go back and simply turn it back on, then you can be able to see them. If you are also wondering if you can change the UI, yes, you can change the UI from darker mode to a lighter mode, but I wouldn't know why you would want to do that. But if this appeals to you, then yes, of course you can do that as well. One more thing I would really like you guys to know about Twinmotion. This is actually not a question, but it's something I would really love you guys to know about, is when you're saving out your clips, there is this feature that you find here. So if I go over to image and create a new image, automatically I have a new image here, so I can make multiple images and have just 2 of them here. Yeah, and if I go into the more option and go over to camera, I can choose to change what width and what height I want the image output to look like. One more question that has been also asked is it's a question that was asked about the custom path tool, and the question says that how can you make a door open and close? So yes, you can make doors open and close in Twinmotion, but the thing is you cannot really make a swinging door open and close. So I have this box. So if you look down here, you find out that it's a box, and the box, we simply created this box from furniture and primitives, then box, and you can see box 1 meter. You see it's the same box here. So the kind of doors you can actually make is you can make swinging doors. You can make swinging doors, but you can make sliding doors. Okay, so you can make doors slide in and out, especially if you want them to happen automatically. You cannot really make them happen by triggers. So unlike game engines where you can add triggers at, let's say, certain distance, so once a character gets close to that point, that cannot happen here, because it's more, this is more like a visualization app. And this is pretty nice because in most of the third-party apps that I've seen, this doesn't really happen. So what we can do here is we can have this object. So what I've done is I have this object which I created kind of earlier, and I just simply added the object to the library. Okay, so if I go over to the user library, you're going to find box 1 meter. Okay, so next thing which we're going to do is I'm going to come over to the custom path, and because we just want to add just a little custom path, I'm going to simply click here to this part. Okay, and right click to just get it out. So let's bring the time of day or the daytime a little bit lower so that we can see what's going on. Okay, now we're losing the entire light. Amazing job there. So I'm just going to come through and just put some light there just to see what's going on. So you can see we'll have this tiny box that's just traveling from one point to the other, and what we want to do actually is we don't want this to rotate, so we don't want the box to rotate, so we're leaving everything at 0. We like the delay time. We want it to loop, but we don't want it to just loop like start from beginning, stop, start from beginning, stop. We want it to open and go back, open and go back, so it just goes, come back, goes and come back. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to loop, and then we can choose from all of this loop and see which one works for us. But I think the loop ping pong seems to do the job a little more better. So it goes there, bounces, stays a while and comes back on. So now we have this box here, and the only way we can replace this is by coming over to our user library, and that was why we had to save it in the beginning. So I can come over to this place, pick this and drag and drop, and you see automatically it replaces it. So now I can simply select this object and delete this object. So we have this door that is sliding from one point to another. And because Twinmotion seems to be one of the best apps when it comes to real-time visualization for architects, you can just simply change as much as you want. So let's say you don't like the fact that it's going all the way to a point, you can just simply fix that. And again, you can come through, go over to the materials, and also change the material to suit what you want. I've never seen wooden stuff like this before, but maybe we can just come through and just get that working out for us. And other ways you can do stuff is you can have this object selected, and then you can go over to the library where this stuff exists and, you know, make amendments to this object. So for example, let's say I have this object here and I want to give it some color or something. What I can do now is I can simply, because I know a lot of people is going to ask me this question, so what I can do now is I can simply just click and get this object created there. And now I have this object created there. I can come through. Okay, let's get this over with. I can come through, go over to the material, and let's pick this wood just to make sure. And let me see, let me find something nicer. Okay, no, we've never seen a door like that before, so let's just find something like this, or maybe something like this. Okay, let's say we have something like this, and for some good measures we just want to change the scale just a little bit more. So once we have this done, we can come over here. You can click on this little menu here, or you can just simply right click and you can replace the object. Okay, so you can choose to replace an object if you have multiple versions of them in your scene, or you can just simply put the object back inside here. So how am I going to put this here? I'm just going to simply, let's just come back here. I'm just going to simply right click and say add to user library one more time. So now I have these objects here, so I can just simply click on this one that is sliding, which you can find if you scroll all the way down to custom object and click and drag, and it replaces it. So now we have no use for this one, and then we can just simply just delete this one. And in case you're wondering, I actually talked about this in the pro tips as well, so I'm just going to go ahead and also just turn this off, or we can just delete this if we don't want it. I also talked about this in the pro tips. If you want to know where all of these objects is being saved, you can find that if you go over to edit preference, or you press Ctrl P, or you can come through and hit preference here, and then you're going to find where the custom part is. Mine is actually saved in the D drive document and all of this fun URL. So yours can be saved somewhere else, or you can choose to create the part where you want this stuff to be saved, just in case you don't want to overload your C drive. You want to just save most of them on maybe a D drive or some other drive that you have. You can put all of those libraries inside there. Okay, and this is about it. I think I have one more question, and that question is let's find that. Yes, the question I have, I don't really have something to show it off with, but I will try. Let's just bring back the daylight, and okay, fine. Let's bring back the daylight to something like this, maybe something a little bit lower. Okay, so let's just have that daylight. Okay, so the question I have is about a double-faced material. Okay, so the question is about a double-faced material, and it's actually from a friend. And the question is simply that when they got to import a certain object into Twinmotion, they figured out that one part of the object is visible when you rotate the camera to an angle, and when you rotate the camera to another angle or to a given angle, they find out that that object is no longer visible. So the thing is, once you get an object imported into Twinmotion, so I'm just going to close this so that we can have just our objects here to play with. So once you import an object like this into Twinmotion, all of the materials that you bring in from whatever app you're working on, the app either suggests that the material would be a double-faced material or a single-faced material. A double-faced material is simple. A double-faced material only simply means that light hits this material from one point, and the material or the object is going to render from one point. And because it's a single-faced material, because it's a single-faced material, what happens is the normals of the material the normals of the object will only cast light where there is normal. If you're looking at a double-faced, so what it simply does is the computer will automatically create for itself something that feels like it. Okay, I'm going to give you a better illustration using an app, a sculpting app called ZBrush, and I think maybe that could help. So you might have gotten a problem like that, and if I have this object selected and come through to this place, you see we have two-sided off. So what this simply means, if this object has an opening inside here, we may not be able to see through that opening. So let's say you have a plane, or let's say you have a roof and the roof is a flat object, you may not be able to see through that roof just simply because that is an open or that is a single-sided object. Okay, so I'm just going to show you that with a ZBrush, an app called ZBrush. I just wish it doesn't crash on me. Okay, good. So now we have these stuff, Okay, I would also just change all of this real quick. So let's restore standard stuff. Good. So now you see you might have issues like this. Now whenever you're working in Twinmotion, when you rotate your object like this, you don't get to see what's going on. Okay, you might have issues like this. So at one angle your object renders, and when you rotate it, the object doesn't render. What happens is the computer or the app doesn't understand what's going on the other side. Okay, so this is where your normals are, and that is why the only things you can do on just one part, on just this part. On this other part, the computer doesn't see what's going on. The computer has no idea what's going on. So what we can do here is we can simply just come through and just tell the computer we want you to render the double sides of this regardless of where the normals are. And so the computer is just going to calculate and cast light in all of these places. And that is exactly the same thing that happens here. So if you have an app, or if you have or let's say you have not an app, let's say you have a model and that model is just rendering one side or it's not rendering the other side, what you can simply do is you can come through and say two-sided, and you turn the two-sided on. And once you do turn the two-sided parts on, automatically Twinmotion is going to go ahead and render that out for you. Okay, and I think that's pretty much it. We'll love to get more questions from you. If there are questions or things that you have tried in Twinmotion and you seem not to find it working for you, it would be amazingly fine if you can send, maybe if you can drop a comment or say something about that, so that maybe I can get into it and find how to get it working for you. There is also a question though, before I forget. I think this is also one of the questions when it comes to comparison with Twinmotion and some other apps. The question is pretty simple, and it's asked that can you render videos in Twinmotion? So let's say we have this beautiful scene, and then what's going on in that scene? We have a house. Inside the house we have all these TVs and stuff. If you're not making a video, if you're not making a walkthrough, I would not advise you to think about adding a video to it. But if you're going to make a walkthrough, yes, it's quite appealing to add videos, but for now Twinmotion doesn't have support for videos, so you can only attach images to your model. You cannot attach a video to your model. That is just the only thing I think Twinmotion doesn't have right now, but over time I think they're going to put all of that into consideration. But despite that, I guess that's just the only thing that it doesn't have. And if you're using Twinmotion 2018, there are things that you probably would be asking questions about, maybe after seeing the entire video. And maybe the questions you might be asking might be things that has to do with reflection probes. And like I've always said, reflection probes does not ship with Twinmotion. You might also be asking questions about decals. The number of decals that you have here in Twinmotion 2019 outweigh the number of decals you can get with Twinmotion 2018. So if you have questions or comments about this video, and maybe there are things you would like me to talk about, and maybe there are things that you still don't have a complete understanding about, there are things you want to know, there are questions you have, and maybe for some reason your model is not just working right, and you've gone through the entire videos we have here on the channel, and you're still not getting exactly what you want, please send me a message, or you can drop it in the comment section down below. We have a community now, and you can just simply ask all of the amazing questions you want to ask in the community, and I'll do my best to get back to you. And so far so good, guys. Till I see you in the next video, peace.